Miseyaun hakmul mogot Another bella
Tulmo mengkira tialong erul pada serap tial program lagi de mereka dikat tilgi amarat tilgi meudling ngkal dila akhir roi dem betul kama ngerlele meudel me ini kaki de name ngkaki de la nexel el guest oke argit kom adang okro se angar beli mi o mesel ngakos ngka ngaram guk melang wa adrak wa public auditor memori ke guk ang arti ram rigel memak masih git am lamot tilgi brab lulat adangot luga kursul me tial programa o melisi lal melte mengelo sengar ngari abluat bot amame ngat berul mensib edel mo mengai bukut mo klak ngar git mo adjust mo ngilak ngar git meng akamara sukum ko ati be erdar mira atletal kim ngarngi di ngardi se bolong du ek me mas ngal masa mo oliu mal mo ngilar beuleng mo bibirat ko iling amal ko tutel to yedel mate gira bluad ma feature ni I made a little introduction and I'm just not going to translate because it's getting too long. So thank you and welcome to this program and welcome to Palau. But as you were sitting there and listening to the previous guest, who are you? What are you doing here? And whether you came here as an enemy or as a friend. Can you introduce yourself and then she's going to summarize?
Sure. My name is CLEO PASKAL, and my mother is Marilee, my father is Tom, my village is...
What clan are you from?
So I'm from the PASKAL clan. It's a very small clan. Up in Canada. And my village is north of Montreal in a place called St. Hippolyte. And it's my whole family is there. My aunts and uncles and cousins and brothers and sisters. Very, very unusual for Canada, but very common for here. And I come as a student. Is what I come as. I come to learn.
And what are you doing?
So what I'm...
And why are you here?
Yeah, so...
Learn what?
Yeah, so I'll give it a little bit more about me and I'll give it a bit of sense. So I'm a journalist by background, but now I work with a think tank because journalism has become very political in the West. So, so when I started in journalism, you used to try to learn and report, and then as honestly as you could be wrong, you could be biased, but at least you're honestly trying to give the information that you received.
Come so this.
Ngara dila betsel okya gariki del ngara kana ta balura kana ta eme mo sen klo tulungal garingir say engia. It's okay. Ang CLEO PASKAL. Kiman load ke oringi nga mama. Ang IRENE nangkang artiang lokong musub. Arigel tuleta lo rula journalism waika lo rula wa Moses malela ni reklay. Tamadu al musub atoko research emalus. Malubet to aisal morapuai. Ang kagidal dio aisal wase Igel guk tokoira journalism omlu sa tial western world at tial guk palura Amerikel makanata malmla moklo politics or alsel mangkagidel ngkanga ako kom te airsel datung ngara Washington DC te airsel datung Indo-Pacific region mang atay to laring yan non-resident senior fellow mangguk ngi atwab der sel tulungal kanira kanata sa baseball mora Washington DC elangguk ngarbelaw ngartial mo March 11 guk musubul wasang wangara gitar other belawa ikagidol tokoira a journalism ma hikal ngara alsela bulwat.
Thank you. Oh, so because of the direction journalism has gone in, I found there was a lot less room for me to just go and learn stuff and then share it with readers. So I moved into the think tank area. Now, there are a lot of different kinds of think tanks. Some of them are very political, some of them are more research-based. And if you're looking at a think tank, the first question is, where's their funding from? And that helps you, like with journalism, helps you figure out how reliable that information is. The think tank I'm with It's called the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. And it takes it's an American think tank. It takes no foreign funding and no defense contractor funding, because a lot of U.S. think tanks will take money from weapons systems also. So their goal is to help understand and protect democracy through research to see what the threats are. Yeah.
الأدرني لوري الكيرير الدون think tank ترغا يجيد الإكسبرتس تبتقل بقبضين الأدت مغلوم داسو مسوب الكيريلا هيكا يجيد الغارنيرا هيكا بقبضين الأبلو واسس القوت الكلو تتلل لوم داسو رنجي سلبولو سوبر أبلو الكيريلا أراد الملوس مر أراد المسوب research الكيريلا يجيل information يجيل تقول توب الكيريل تيالبلو هواسه تانجل التوب داودود لومار إنجيا أوريول مورسل think tank الترجل التوب داودود المورتير أنكليلا foundation for defense of democracy. Okay.
So this work you're doing, what are you doing in Palau in terms of this work you're doing and in the Pacific?
Yeah. So
why are you doing this?
Yeah. So you know much better than I. There's been a lot of attention on Palau and the Pacific Islands in the last few years. And often people try to speak for you, right? And that doesn't, first of all, it's not correct, but also it's not morally correct, but also it doesn't work. You know, like it gives a wrong impression of what's going on the ground. And in Palau, so I'm doing a project that's looking at the 3 freely associated states, because you are on the front line of all of this pressure and we talked about it before we started, people who want to influence you one way or another. One way of the FAS to try to grab control of the conversation so that you're sure that it's what you want is to have a position like a national security coordinator position. Okay? And of the, I don't know if you want to translate and then I'll go on.
Luase ay gigil mo ngaringi ay kalpulwath el mlamo mregale de el raqma al mutul betok en mal klo attention mal klo adlo mesel mabdul tial Asia Pacific region lwaikid el other belaw ultimo korseikid e wase ebl oil el bekpadingel al ad mar adrablu al ad el tira ame ay kalpulwath amod ore mesad el giret emraringin dial girel لأن واسن جيرل غارين كل نيا أضرب الواد التيرجل أضرب الواد لهم تأركيد من واسع وتسويلا ترى مسب المونغ سويرا ويجا كده التغير إيشيا باسيفيك تغوبت ساقوك غارين البلا والملا ومو التياجيد الأوبيس National Security Coordinator سلوبيس الغارين Jennifer Anson.
So Palau is the only of the 3 FAS to do this so far. And the other 2 FAS are looking to Palau to learn. So there are, and that's why I'm here, to learn, because we had this discussion before about if you have the office, how do you set up the office, how do you staff it, how, you know, all of those questions. They're questions FSM and RMI are also asking themselves.
Melaw ulangartial belaw المسؤول بتاعي National Security Coordinator's Office le belaw the imora كايجي the level بلول كذا أو كم بقت البنجلا بلول أمريكا الملامق تبعي تاجي the lobby's National Security Coordinator من سؤال موجل سوبي لملام سؤال أكو كرادرا FSM ما RMI مارشال ما FSM أو كنا مسؤولين ديرق المرورة OCC.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's fast forward to today. As you know, and I saw your podcast and I read a little bit about you. And the concern that even Palau is looking at is the the intrusion of the Chinese into the Pacific, and good example, like the Solomon Islands, they literally bought the government. So, and there's a pressure on us. They want us to have relationship and, dump Taiwan, but that cannot happen. So, what you are working for in defense of democracy. And I think we as a people have accepted democracy as a form of government, that we have freedom of the press like here, and we have freedom to speak out our mind and to do things for our lives, So your observation in the Solomons, and I'm sure that's your concern, because if they become a dictatorship, under the Chinese Communist Party, then they're gone, So,
Mike, so I have a lot of friends who are Solomon Islanders, and my concern is for them, because do you know Daniel Sudani? He was the premier of Malaita province, and when Prime Minister Sogavari made the decision to switch from Taiwan to China in September 2019, he did it without consulting the population. And Malaita province, which has the most people, said, we don't want any CCP-linked businesses to operate in our province.
CCP is the Communist Party of China, right?
That's right. And one of the reasons he said, so this was a statement by the government of Malaita with the traditional chiefs. And they said it's because we believe in freedom of religion, and we're Christian people. Yeah, and the Chinese Communist Party, by its definition, is atheist and against religion. And so we think that it's bad for our people to have that influence in our society.
So, how do you see the situation in the context of Solomon now? And then our situation is a little different because we have a compact of free association. So it's guaranteed the U.S. is going to be here, military and all that. And if China is going to hit U.S., they're probably going to blow us out of the...
So so I'll go back. So what happened with Sudani was the Chinese put in millions of dollars to buy up the half plus one of the Assembly of Malaita. And about a month ago, they had a vote of no confidence, and he lost. And the first thing that the new government has said they're going to do is get rid of that communique that says no CCP businesses. So now you have a situation where, and the government of Solomons has signed an agreement with China that says they can ask the Chinese to come in to protect Chinese citizens and Chinese major industries. So the government of Solomons can say, if you want to cut down all the trees in Malaita, Chinese company, go ahead. And if you have problems with the locals, bring in your military.
Oh my God.
Wow.
That's really scary.
So
it's very sad.
Yeah, it's absolutely very sad.
But I want to talk about what happened. So Daniel Sudani, nobody defended him. The Australians didn't defend him. The Americans didn't defend him.
And the local people also didn't.
They tried
defend their own.
Yeah, they really tried. So
Some.
It's like a state government.
Well, so what happened was they tried the vote of no confidence before, and the people of Malaita came and blocked the entry to Parliament, especially the women. They sat in front of the Parliament building because, for custom, you can't step over the women. So they blocked the entry so that the vote couldn't be done. But then the Australians sent weapons, the Chinese started doing training, and Sudani knew this time if the people came out to defend him, they were in danger. So, and there was a small group that tried to defend him, and they were tear gassed. So for the safety of his own people, he said, don't come out this time. They want to create a situation where they can say you're violent and they can come after you.
So, in a way, you work for this organization that defend democracy. And the people of Malaita don't want the Chinese Communist Party and their ways of government to come in. Because if they come in, then their religion, they cannot practice their faith like the Chinese people now.
They're worried.
And they cannot speak out against the government. And then they're going to be literally under a dictatorship, which is happening in China now.
Yeah, so, and Prime Minister Sogavare has already postponed elections. There were supposed to be elections in Solomons in 2023. And he said, and they also are going to have the Pacific Games. And he said, we only have money for either the elections or the games. So we're going to have the games. And they bought enough of the parliament, and we have the names, and in some cases, the bank accounts. They bought half of the parliament, or 2/3 of the parliament, to change the constitution to postpone the elections.
Wow.
So it's already happening. And I have to say, if I was a Pacific Islander who cared about democracy, I would respectfully say to the Solomon Islands, we can wait for the games. Have your elections, and then after the elections, we'll come for the games.
So Palau will also have to think about that and make their decision,
But I know about the situation in Solomons. I mean, they're giving them millions of dollars. It's probably the biggest gym or stadium in the whole Pacific, and so these poor all those big islands. They have what 700,000 people. I mean, they're so poor, and if the Chinese come with a lot of money to give them to elevate their lives. Whereas the Australians have been dealing with them, British and American, and I've been there. I mean, I have a friend that I've been there. I mean, you go to those islands and say, shit. They're so poor.
Is China giving money to the government?
Yes.
In the form of like grant or loans or?
There's all of that, and there's a lot of cash. There's tens of millions in cash.
Of course.
And the thing about first of all, you are absolutely right. Australia has been a disaster, and the U.S. didn't even have an embassy there until about a month ago, right? So it's China uses those opportunities, and what China tends to do is it takes a real problem, and there has been a real problem with development Solomons, then it blows it up, and then gives you the wrong solution, right? But the thing about lifting quality of life, personally, if I was a Solomon Islander, instead of a stadium, I'd want a hospital.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's the same here in Palau. We would rather have a very, very excellent state-of-the-art hospital.
Yeah.
So, but
hopefully the U.S. would do its part. Otherwise, Palauans might go to China for a hospital.
Here
is the thing that even the Chinese government, we met with the Chinese government people in 2018. Former president, former vice president, myself, and 4 others. They invite us political party in the 8-member coalition under the communist government. They invite us, and we were there treated as like official delegation, and they openly tell us, if we change your government to a relationship with us, we'll give you $200 million for budgetary support.
Yep.
We build you a hospital, we build you, and then we bring our tourists. Yep. But here is the thing. 2014, the over 100,000 tourists here all came from China. Yep. And they built hotels around the island. The Americans have not built a hotel here. The Japanese built one hotel, but so these people who provide employment for us, the tax went through the roof.
Yeah.
And then you come and tell us, or Americans
our
and tell us,
suffer though.
Yeah, come and tell us that, hey, these communists, they're going to, if they control your government, they're going to prevent you people from practicing your religion and freedom of the press and all.
Yeah.
So you talk about ideas, and then you talk about your pocketbooks. Which one you go?
You're absolutely right. And you get caught in this mindset because that's what China and the U.S. are looking at each other, and so you're looking China, U.S., but there's a whole big world out there, There's Japan, there's India,
Yes,
there's
Canada.
Philippines. I mean, I wouldn't count on us, but there are a lot of other options, and that's why something like the NSC is so important, or even a think tank developing your own policies, so that instead of just saying you're going to offer me this and you're going to be offering me this, you can say what I want is this, and maybe it's going to come from someone you don't expect, and I mean, Philippines is right next door. India is moving into the area. Japan is an old friend. You have all these other options because you have problems with like what happened with the Chinese. They built all the hotels, then you didn't do what they wanted, and they pulled all the money out. Right? That's how they operate. So as long as you're doing what they want, you'll get the breadcrumbs from their table.
Yeah,
But you're not getting any crumbs from anybody else, so I understand.
and then I think freedom is something that we also we cherish, and then we support it and we accept it as a form of government, this democracy that we're going to have for the rest of our lives.
But look at how fast it lost in the Solomons. In the Solomons, they lost it in 3 years. They flipped to China in September 2019. And Daniel Soudani now, he lost his position and he's had to leave the country. He's in Fiji.
Wow.
That's how fast it can happen. So when you say you'll never leave Taiwan, I'm not so sure. And if they find the right people, they might decide that for their own sake, whatever, they think it's a good opportunity to flip. And it's not like it used to be before, where countries are flipping back and forth. Now, you flip to China, that's it. So, it's...
I think we only have 5 countries now with ties with Taiwan, right?
4 in the Pacific. So you, Marshall Islands, Nauru, and Tuvalu.
What about but I think there's
Other parts of the world, there's some, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, CLEO, I mean,
economically taking over.
you're discussing things that are kind of heavy, and I think it just flies over the heads of ordinary Palawans who are listening to us. But it's important of your right to your freedom to express yourself through election,
And your religion.
through public, and practice your religion.
Culture.
Is so important because these things are hard for people to understand. Why? Because they look at it, well, this Chinese, I mean, our origin goes back to southern China 4,000 years ago. They were doing business, they were buying shells hundreds of years ago here. And then this new era, then they come in and pour money into this. So, I mean, it's, I don't know. I mean, how do you kind of, like, we as Palawans now, given our situation, how do we kind of wiggle our way through this?
So I think the average Palawan knows more geopolitics than the average citizen of any other country outside the region, because you've lived it. It's in your family history. You had to deal with the Germans. You had to deal with the Japanese. You had to deal with the Americans. World history is family history in Palau.
Right.
So you're a very sophisticated group of people. You know how geopolitics can change your country, can make you a target, you've lived it. You've talked to the elders.
It's in our DNA as well. A lot of these colonial countries integrated into our culture with their languages, with their blood, DNA, with all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So Palau and Palauan language, this and the culture are really one of the last remaining indigenous in the world that we're striving to preserve and conserve.
Yes.
And then on top of that, we're Christian based, so it's really difficult to.
Yeah. So you're here. So what's your message to us, to the people who are listening to us, or at least whatever you do? Because when people come in, as she said, for hundreds of years they come and tell us and control us and our government.
Change us.
So here, I'm a Palawan. I'm sitting in front of the television now or the radio and say, "Oh, who's this lady, CLEO?" So he says, "This for what? And why are we bring you to the program?" Yeah.
So first of all, that's the right question. You should, and whenever anybody shows up on your doorstep, you should be asking, why are you here?
Please speak to the audience
okay,
so
sorry.
they will see you and know your message to them.
Okay. Well, so my message is to trust each other and talk to each other and take control of the conversation, so that when people like me come in, you're telling me what you want, and you're questioning. It's not me going this way; it's you coming this way, and then you'll get a better sense of what the people coming into the country are actually thinking. Palau is a very complicated place. The family relationships, the political relationships, the geography. Nobody who comes in for a month or a year or 10 years is going to understand Palau.
So, as you know, we have different organizations in Palau, non-profit, non-government, and then we have government organizations, plenty. So, you're coming in from a think tank, which I understand is private, it's not government, U.S. government entity.
It's non-profit.
Yeah, so the question is that, and you cover a subject that's so wide and general. And I don't think any like this non-profit organizations, because you either commerce or you have some kind of climate change things and environmental groups. But so you come here with this, with your message, with this entity. So my point is that, so because we as a media have become kind of think tank.
Yeah.
Because in this forum, in the other stations, in the newspaper, we throw these ideas and we question things and we report things. So we're having a interesting kind of dynamism in this government where like the leaders are silent. The elected leaders and traditional leaders are silent to all these problems that we're dealing now.
And there is corruption.
Everywhere. Everywhere.
And then talking about freedom and democracy, they're gonna say, what? I mean, so it's something that I'm thinking as you to speak that maybe like can IRENE or me or other people become part of your organization, so instead of duplicating, creating a new organization, then we can promote it because it's so important.
So
People think.
So the first step is to go, we don't want to be part of your organization. We want to do our own thing. Don't this is this thing. You're a freedom fighter. You've been a freedom fighter your whole life,
So we
right?
can be a partner.
Yeah. Well,
Not a part, but a partner.
you could be the boss. I mean, you taking control of your own country is the only way this is going to work. Other people can come in with they can give you all sorts of plans and things like that, but they don't know your country, and your country's a complicated
And
country.
they also have corruption in even UN agencies have their own corruptions inside there.
So I'll give you an example. I was in Angar. I looked at the over the horizon radar, that installation they're putting there. The contractors they just started bulldozing. They didn't get the environmental clearance. They didn't do a proper things, and now there's concern that the second phase is a Turkish company, and they don't know whether they're going to be Turkish workers coming onto Angar, and the local population is concerned, all that stuff. If you have a think tank that does a research paper on what the locals on Angar think about contractors and what they want, not just the problem, but the solution. How do you improve the relationship with U.S. contractors? Do you say, if you're going to have a contract in Palau, you have to offer it to Palauan companies, for example? Let them bid. Publish it in the local newspaper so they can at least, you don't have to give but you at least have a thing. So those solutions, they can't come from me.
So the contractor in Angar just started bulldozing without
Demining,
demining?
Yeah.
So here is the thing, I've been thinking about this, and with some of my friends, we've been trying to to do something like how can we create an organization that defend the democracy and transparency and anti-corruption.
Yeah.
But it's a kind of big subject that we are facing. But this democracy, we're so free now that I mean, we don't think we'll ever be oppressed by anybody. I mean,
Let alone China.
yeah.
We're far from thinking
I
that.
mean, and I sincerely hope that's the case. What we saw, not only in Solomon's, but in Sri Lanka and in Maldives and a whole lot of places,
Kiribati.
every country is only one election away from a change in the system.
Wow.
And sometimes you don't know how it happened. So
Maldives
what happened in Maldives was the Chinese wanted to get their candidate as president. So they gave money to the Maldivians who lived in Sri Lanka to vote for their candidate in the Maldivian election. So you can be sure there's money in Guam looking for the Palauans who will vote for the Chinese candidate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Palau is very small. It's a small population here on island, so we know who are for the Chinese.
But the people in
We know
Guam
the
might
few.
not know.
We know the few
Yeah.
for the Chinese. The majority are for democracy in America. But there are a few who are okay with getting money.
Yeah.
It's part of corruption.
And it's not for me to say who to vote for. I'm just saying if you have a think tank or media or thing for you to look at your specific challenges so that when those decisions are made, they're made with transparency.
Well, the media is the fourth branch of government, Irmang. Why doesn't the media become the think tank?
But
Think
The
tank
four branch of government.
a think tank has a bit of a different function. So it can sometimes there's crossover, but what I think. So, like I said, there's some think tanks that are very biased. They're just political.
Yeah. Okay.
But this sort of stuff I do is just research based, like the auditor. A lot of what he does, he'll do that research and then hope that it gets publicized, right? But a think tank can do the research and publicize it.
So I have a question for Cleo. And you're from Canada, born and raised. Right now, we have a compact with the United States. Canada is right over the United States. We see everything that's happening in the United States right now, and it scares us a bit. So when we're fighting for democracy, and the U.S. itself is looking like a chaotic world about to, have a civil war again, then we get a bit scared. What does Canada think about? How is it like, and what does it think about what's happening in the U.S. as a neighbor?
Canada, countries think about themselves. So Canada, all politics is local. So we don't. Canada is one of the luckiest, most blessed countries on the planet. We're the second largest landmass. First is Russia, second is Canada. Yeah. We have we have 35 million people, 1/10 the population of the U.S. We're physically bigger than the U.S., 1/10 the population. Wow. We have oil and gas and gold and water and agriculture and
Everything.
Yeah, so we are a very spoiled country.
And you have a very young prime minister also.
Yeah, pretty young.
Young and sassy.
Yeah. So we get caught up in our own stuff, but quite honestly, Palau lives geopolitics more than Canada. We only have one border, and that's a border with the United States. And the United States is our major security provider.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's what Canada's relationship with. Okay.
Yeah.
We're coming to a close, so
Thank you.
5 minutes left. So I'd like you to kind of, think of, so how do we do it? Like, how do we resist or organize ourselves and develop ourselves, when these big countries do not come in and buy us or use us for their own political end? Because, during the negotiation of the compact, I was one of the last ones. Because we asked the Americans, I said, you tell us we give you our land, our water, our skies, in return, you said you're going to defend us and defend you. But so we ask you, you defend us from what? Because we think of ourselves as enemy of none and friends to all. So, but in this, this new strategy, Indo-Pacific, the United States has inserted us into part of that defense, half circle from, Japan all the way down to Australia now. So we're kind of forced into a situation where I'm sure if China and US start a war, we'll be one of the first islands to be blown away.
Yeah.
So
We become actually
so the question, I'm thinking, I said, okay,
Harmless.
so what do we do now? I mean, we're such a small country and entity in the...
So, don't ask foreigners what to do. You've got to decide what to do. But the first group to ask outside of Palau are the other countries that have the same problem, FSM and RMI.
Right.
And, talking to each other more will let you learn from their experiences.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And President Panuelo wrote a really good letter to Pacific Island leaders about this situation. Right. It was made public. And U.S. isn't going to start a war. It's not going to shoot first. The concern is that China does what it says it's going to do and try to take Taiwan. And if it tries to take Taiwan, then the security perimeter for China starts at Taiwan and goes out around Taiwan. Yeah. So, and that includes Palau.
Right.
So it's not the U.S. that's putting you at risk. The U.S., as you know, you've said it before, the U.S. was happy to pull out of the region before, right?
Now they're back.
Yeah, well, and they're back because of Chinese aggression and because China is saying we're going to take Taiwan.
Right.
And if they take Taiwan, Japan is affected. Philippines is affected, Cambodia, Malaysia, that whole line, all of those treaty partners of the U.S. who say, U.S., you promised you'd defend us, we're all going to be affected. So Palau gets pulled into that, and that's why I think your first best friends, ideally, is FSM and RMI. They've got exactly the same problem you do. And then you look at your other neighbors, look at Philippines, look at Japan, look at the other ones that'll be pulled in and learn from them what they think is going to happen.
Yeah, the biggest fear, and NGIRMANG knows this very well, is money, economic stuff. So hopefully if the U.S. gets more interested in helping us to economically develop, then these few bad lemons in our basket who will sell their souls, I call them in Palau, local people who are sophisticated prostitutes, who would sell their soul, their land, it doesn't just for money, that can affect our little 12,000 people living here.
Yeah.
So hopefully the U.S. will be more open to helping us with economic development. So therefore,
Investment.
Yeah, but I'd recommend
development. So we don't.
Yeah.
Those few bad lemons don't open their skirts and go to China.
Yeah.
To come and take over us.
U.S. may come and go. I mean, the compact is permanent, but that kind of investment, that interest may come and go, whatever. But you've got neighbors. You have direct flights from Japan could really help your economy.
Yes.
More, fisheries agreements with, other neighbors. Like you have, you've really gotten caught in this either China or the U.S. thing. And the world is so much bigger than that.
Yes.
And then you say that India is moving into the Pacific, which is kind of a good idea.
Nice.
President Modi is going to PNG in the next few months. Yeah.
Very nice.
Can we divert his flight also to stop in Palau before we go to PNG?
So this is something that if you work with the Japanese, Japan and India are working close together, and then it can become more interesting. I have actually recommended it.
Very good. Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you very much. We're coming to an end, so I'm going to post to you what I post to my good friend CJ. BJ, you came, you saw, and then what?
Then I go swimming.
Yeah, take some time and enjoy the nature of Palau.
And you're leaving on the 11th.
On the 11th, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we can have lunch
we're not,
before you leave.
Please.
So we're not
you.
going to see you again?
I hope so. I mean, your country is beautiful and fascinating, and I learn an incredible amount, so I very much like it.
And the work you do is incredibly important. And I really want to thank you for being here. Hopefully, we could have lunch with Jennifer Anson as well, and learn more about what you do and how we can help from the grassroots.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not help. You do. You
Do what you need
do.
to do.
Do it for your. Yeah. You do
what
for
we need to
yourselves.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the reason why we move for independence is because we want a right to determine our destiny, to
Yeah.
preserve our culture and our environment.
Yeah.
And we want to think for ourselves and do
Have
things.
the freedom to
But we
think
kind of
for
thrust into this
ourselves.
situation that we really have to look at it and study, because how do, and this is where think tank can come in. So it looks like the media is now think tank because we're the ones who bring up this, our leaders just concerned about budget and project. So it's something that's very important, you know. As I'm talking with you, I'm thinking about it. I said, maybe I'm going to recommend IRENE here to be, organizer of us to have a, kind of this kind of organization.
We'll definitely stay in touch with you, Cleo.
No,
So,
thank you. It'd be an honor. Thank
Okay.
you.
yeah.
So you want a last word before we close?
Sulang.
Mesulang.
Yeah. That,
Otherwise, kumal masawal ko dila kalme lang gidirek ko da mana mata time le ngal dilam lo meu del me direk ko pray mo tarakestra kumam kumanom saul dila ka di mol bote ba kal tukol ku kimul ko ila sumgaria il mail mong ya kutmukliak lang gid ma future ba gidra tarak club se michael tukol sisi il blue na mes so is be emalar gid mortir bolsa bedlu make sure se tel ada belar kita amal mol ngaringil morar kada makasay him ka belum katam itu hindi sum katam mo matanget koy mo matanget ka gidlol koy kang may kal bebirat koy iya mos eder mom sisi il di gidlol kadit ikut maklital beluan maklangar gid marang leket
I say.
hindi
Masaw.
metiang eko mamsula
Eo marang moula mayop au ngil madangali arngul belang isay yaul akmul mogon